A fifth point, this is another sense of interdisciplinarity. The attempt to analyse the Anglophone and more generally Europhone discourse on religion as a category cannot be done if the analysis is confined to India, or Japan, or indigenous America, or England, or Africa, and so on. And this is because the discourse, the modern discourse on religions and religious experiences, it's a global discourse. And I lived in Japan, and within certain circles, within Japanese academia, there is a very intense discussion going on about whether this Anglophone discourse on religion really applies in Japan, how it fits in. And I believe that actually we could do the same with my country, England, because it seems to me that there is a serious problem in England as well. So I don't think we should be looking, obviously India is what we're going to be talking about, but I think we need to be able to take a comparative stance and a broader picture. And we need to see that the discourse on religions is a global problem. It's not just an Indian problem or a Japanese problem or a Chinese one. A sixth point is that, as I suggested when I was talking about the way these different binaries replace each other in a circle, that there is no definitional solution, and we're chasing our own tails if we're looking for one. I would say that the power of all these categories, whether we're talking about religion, politics, the state, society, actually none of us have seen a religion. None of us have seen a society. What we see is human beings behaving in certain ways. These are all constructs. And if we get into the notion that we can define definitively one of these terms, I think that we are deluding ourselves. And indeed, I would say the power of these categories to persist in public discourse is precisely their evasiveness, their slippery quality, that you cannot pin them down. I did some research in India in the mid-80s and in the early 90s, and I was researching Ambedkar and Buddhism and Dalits in Maharashtra. And this made me very, very conscious of the problematic of bringing our English language categories to a very complex movement which does not really fit into one or the other of these mutually exclusive categories. My most recent publication on this, I haven't been to India for 17 years, but somehow this research, gets recycled. But the most recent publication was analysing sex minorities and social movements in India. The case of Ambedkar Buddhism and Dalits in this book by Surendra Gundale and Johan Welts, Reconstructing the World. And one of the things I've tried to question in that article is, how do you make a distinction between talking about, say, Buddhists or Hindus or Christians or Muslims as ethnic groups on the one hand and as religious groups on the other? This is, it seems to me that to do this, we need to actually find other terminology, because I cannot find any convincing distinction. For example, in David Lorenzen's, in many ways, brilliant papers, David is an outstanding Indologist, but I cannot find any way from his theorizing of distinguishing between, say, Christians, Hindus, and Buddhists as ethnic categories and as religious categories. I don't know what the defining criteria is, and I don't really believe there is one. But I think that we need to look at that in a completely different way. One of the things that was often said to me by people who knew something about Ambedkar Buddhism and Dalits, particularly the Buddhist wing of it, was that it's very difficult to know whether they're truly religious or whether they're really political. Now in English, you see, that is the kind of language which substantiates this essential distinction. Are they really religious or are they really political? And this either-or dichotomy, such as Dr. Ambedkar pretended to be religious, but really he was a politician. This assumption assumes that we have a really meaningful, essentialized distinction between religious practices and political practices. But I want to question that. Let me give you some examples of the way I'm concentrating on religion and politics, because I can't talk about religion and science, religion and the state, all of them. So I'm concentrating on religion and politics. And I'd like you to consider this passage on the back of the book, or The Desecularization of the World, edited by the famous sociologist Peter Berger. And Robert Wathnow of Princeton University says, "The myth that religion has become irrelevant dies hard, especially among university faculty who consider themselves too enlightened to be bothered with religion. The essays in this provocative volume prove that religion has not only survived, it is flourishing. From Peru to Guatemala, from China to the Sudan, and from barrios in Los Angeles to temples in New York City, we see the evidence of this resurgence. And in all these places, religion is having an impact on political life. Whether we like it or not, religion must be reckoned with by any serious student of human affairs." Now, I think if you just think for a moment about this language, to me it is really noticeable that in this text, religion is actually being represented as something in the world. It's a thing. It's even an agent. Religion is doing this, religion is doing that. Also, religion is flourishing. It's got an almost organic, metaphorical content. Also, religion has an impact on political life. Here's political life. Religion has an impact on it. It's coming, as it were, from outside into the sphere which is demarcated by politics. Now, I would say that what this language is doing is animating what are really categories of thought. They're being turned into living things, into agents. This is what anthropologists in the 19th century used to call animism. These people are animists. They're at a lower level of evolution. But isn't this animism? Religion is thriving, religion is swooping in and impacting on politics, and politics is getting back a bit here and saying, hey, wait a minute, this is my arena here, get out, you want to fight? So I feel that there's something very, very animistic about this language.